G'day, welcome back to Project Brupeg, story of a sunken fishing trawler converting into a global expedition and research boat. Ventilation pipes. We're going to make them bolt in, bolt out, and that solves the issue that we have with that hatch binding up on them. Now to do that, we need to make some flanges. There's a couple of options. We could buy some off the shelf, take out a mortgage to do that, and we'll be sweet. Another option, get them laser cut. Not necessarily the most reliable place in town, probably a 3-month waiting list to get that done. Or we could make our own. I think we'll do that. Conveniently, we had a paint can that was exactly the right size as the OD we needed, so we marked that out. We then needed to put a hole right in the centre. To do that, we need a centre punch. We couldn't find ours, so obviously we had to make one. Right. I'm just guesstimating where the centre is. I'm going to throw a hole, I plan 6mm bolt, so I'm going to pop a hole in these, throw a 6mm drill in the drill press, knock a 6mm in all of them. Then I'm going to plasma them out, but I'm going to plasma them pretty generously, so I've got maybe 10 or 15mm either side of what I want to finish up with. And I'm going to build a plasma jig, so that's going to be pretty cool. I'm not going to tell you what it is, you'll see. I'm pretty chuffed with it. I haven't even built it yet, and I'm chuffed. Hey, it survived it! So you've previously seen us lift up the hatch that's underneath this sofa in the lounge. The pipes that we put in for ventilation for the cabins downstairs, we have to take them out every time we open the hatch. It's because they're basically too tight against the hatch at the bottom. A couple of ways that we can solve that. We could cut the hatch, which has its pros and cons. 2 smaller hatches are much easier to lift and close and deal with than 1 larger hatch. However, this hatch might be open once, maybe twice a year. The rare occasion that we need to deal with it, it's easier to not muck around and waste a few days engineering that hatch to be smaller. We're just going to make the pipes bolt-in removable. The way we're going to do that with a couple of flanges. We looked at a rubber joiner, that we can just put a joiner at the top and a joiner at the bottom, but they stink and they're going to smell the interior of the boat out with a rubber smell, so we're not doing that. We're just going to use some stainless, bit of gasket paper, and we're going to build some flanges. The plan is at each end of the pipe, so one at the roof and one at the hole down behind the sofa there. We're going to be putting a flange onto the main pipe in the middle, and then also the piece that gets welded to the roof and the piece that gets welded to the bottom of this bulkhead down here. So it's time to build some flanges. Time for the small grinder. That pile, that's a couple of flanges. I'd like to introduce the Plasmatic 3000. Benefits of Plasmatic include, but are not limited to, symmetry for all you OCD freaks out there, enhanced engineering capabilities, and a slight fire risk. The big reveal. Okay, my dodgy little plasma cutter connected to a camera stand with structural masking tape. Alright, so what we've done, put it in the drill press with our little 6mm bolt. We can spin the drill press around. That gets us a beautiful circle. You can see I've done a couple of test cuts there with my gadget. This thing is going to make ourselves some flanges. So that's what they look like, 8 flanges. You can sort of see the edges are relatively clean. They're a bit grubby when you look on the bottom. You can sort of see all of that slag and stuff, but that'll come up pretty easy with a grinder. These are a pair of drawers that we found at the scrappy a while back, probably 6 months ago. They're going to become tool storage in the engine room. So Trev's chopping the top half off. We can't use that, it's too awkward in the engine room. But we can definitely use those 2 drawers, nice big, decent ones. So we'll get that cut and we'll get it mounted underneath the stainless shelf on the right hand side of the engine room as you walk in. The inside panes for our double glazing arrived. They've radiused the corners off and then they've put a 45 right on this edge here so that if we bop anything it's really hard to sort of break the window and smash it. Thanks to David Cochran for donating the money for these. It's going to be blooming awesome to get them in the boat. I really appreciate it. Thanks, mate. Sorry, this next bit's a wee bit drawn out. Williams, if you're watching, I still remember your words to these days where I picked up a square file and you yelled at me and you said, "Round files for round holes!" We have to make each flange an identical pair, so we TIG them together and then Trev drills a 6mm hole through and then I can TIG on a captured nut onto each hole and that way we know that both of them are going to bolt up perfectly to each other. This is how it's going to sit through the roof. So the steel on the roof is about here, gets welded on, got 120mm of insulation, and then we've got about 50mm sticking out of the roof so that we can actually get to it and do work on it and all that sort of stuff. So if these nuts ever do break, we can put a spanner on them. And Jess said it's engineered to smash your face into it. I got a hole because instead of putting the heat into the in like halfway between the two, slightly more into this one because it's thicker. I ended up putting too much into the pipe. And the
So
pipe,
where you were aiming was too high?
Yeah, I was aiming in the wrong spot and basically blew a hole in there, missed with the filler metal, like balls the weld up completely.
So you just need to fill that now, right?
Yeah. I think that'll about do it. So there's what we end up with, so pretty nice even weld all the way around. Right, we've run out of argon, so that kind of cancels TIG welding for the day. Right. Stay there.
So we might have those vents in by the end of today, that'd be awesome.
So we've got heavy duty sliders, they're quite lovely. They have little locking and spring back mechanism type thing. We don't have the rivets that we need to connect these, so we need to get some 532 rivets, and we've got nothing big enough, so we'll get those when we go into town next and then put those on, and then we can start mounting those drawers into the engine room. Let's get the other helmets so we can see what you're doing. So we want to get your molten going, and then nice circles, that's it. Lovely, lovely. Go a wee bit closer to the work. That's it. Keep going. Doing great. Just stop and have a look. Excellent. I mean, holy shit.
Wow!
Do you want to have a look at this?
Oh yeah, it's really easy.
Yeah, have a look at it, well.
Shocking.
Isn't it awesome?
It'll get better as you go.
Oh,
Don't you just
I'll try hard.
You just keep trying hard. It'll be alright.
Isn't it great?
I think secretly we've found our TIG welder.
Yeah.
So we've got to weld these on, and then we have to position it so that the nuts, the bolts are out the side so we can get them at all times. Yeah, so they're going to go on like that. Same deal. We're basically just melting the two together. Yeah, there'll be a bit of. They're not perfect, but our CNC wasn't calibrated before we plasmed it at your time, and
We can't do it in the wind.
yeah.
I need a sheltered thing.
Why don't we check out over that side? Maybe we can set up on that side of the boat. Use the boat as the shelter, so the boat will be a wind block if we set up on
Oh,
that
you're
side.
talking about the other side?
Yeah, why don't we look at setting up over there?
Yeah, maybe we have to, yeah.
Yeah,
There's a bit of welding to do.
yeah, there is. This is what we're after. Nice, lovely, smooth, flat flange. Same on both sides. So we'll bolt this one to this guy here, and we can fit it into the boat and start measuring up for the top. Now I have trimmed probably 30 mil, 40 mil off each one of these, so that we can stick it in without having to try and line it up with the roof. We don't need them to be that long. They're now going to be shortened by about probably another 100 mil on top of that, maybe 120 mil. And there's going to be the equivalent flange, same as what we've done with that bottom pipe, basically mounted up this end as well. Over the back here, Trev's gasketeering. We've got some gasket paper. We're going to trim it out so you can sort of see, take that inside ring out, leave this edge, put our bolt holes through there, and that's what's going to seal between the two stainless flanges. Hey, look at that. That's what we're left with. Pipe, flange, gasket paper in between. Now this flange has sort of walked out a little bit when we've welded, so that it splays out a wee bit, but it seals up in the middle. That's the theory. If it does leak, there's not necessarily going to be any drama, because it's going to take air from the least point of resistance. This big open 4-inch hole here is going to be the easiest way to drag air in. A little bit might leak. The other thought we had is get rid of the gasket paper altogether and do a bead of sealant, let it dry, and then sort of squash it up. I've done that before on previous joints. We did it on our engine bay hatch. But let's see if this is going to work. So we've got a bit of a gap at the roof that we need to put the flange in up there. And down the bottom here. It's fairly tight against the wall. So basically we just have to make sure the flange is tight enough against the wall that it allows that hatch to open, which it will. So that's exactly what we're after. And the bolts are really easy to get to from this side. So taking this pipe off is a 2-minute job. Well, that was easier than I thought. Is there an adjustable spanner somewhere floating around on the rear deck of the boat? I mean, I think it's a given, it's a yes.
Morning.
Good morning.
Looks quite morning in the yard.
So we've got our pipes sitting in place. So that's the flanges, that's how far away from the wall they sit, they're pretty tight. And then up on the roof, they're 150mm down from the roof, and that allows for all of the insulation and roof panels and everything that needs to go in. We already buzzed off the paint around the top, so we're just going to go up now and weld it. We're going to do it with the MIG, just because it's fast and easy and we can get it done nice and quick. I do have one little trick up my sleeve, and that's creating a adhesive gasket. So it's not using rubber or paper. We were going to use paper, then we thought maybe we use some of the fuel rubber. We're not going to do any of that, it's not big enough. The flange, when we welded it, we blew a couple of holes in it. When we fix those holes up, it's warped the flange quite a bit. We straightened it as much as we can, but there's still a deflection there that's going to be too much for the rubber gasket. So we're going to build a gasket out of adhesive, so I'll show you how we do that. It works quite well for really robust sort of gaps that you've got to fill up. So a trick you can use when you're welding really thin stainless steel like this steel's 1.6mm thick, and I've got the welder set for 4mm, so it's quite hot for that steel. The trick is using small bursts, that way the heat doesn't build up long enough to blow a hole, but it builds up hot enough to melt both pieces of metal together. Bloody lovely morning up on the wheelhouse, but it's bloody noisy. The guys are sandblasting, so the yard's got this haze of dust all over it. Yeah, earplugs are mandatory, it's just too noisy. Right, drill on. Now to clarify that this isn't the door aid box, but we do need to put a little bit of a drain hole. We've got a 4mm hole in each corner, one here and one over the other side. The reason I've done tiny little holes is I need water to drain out. There's going to be very little water that gets into this because it's tucked up underneath the roof of the wheelhouse. But the bigger the hole, this is going to be creating a vacuum. The pump will create a vacuum in here, so any air that's in here is going to get sucked out through this hole. So if I have a big hole, I'm going to have less ventilation in the rooms downstairs. So hence we've got very small holes just to drain water when the fan's off, basically. With those pipes now fitted, the flanges are on, we're going to use sealant to seal up those gaskets where the flanges need to be. The last thing we need to do is fit the fan to the top of that stainless box, and then we've got ourselves an extracted system. The fan we're using comes with these clips on the side. Look, we can just undo that. That's our fan.
coming in
Yeah.
the sides, eh? There's quite a pull.
Is it? To give you an idea, that's at full power, and that's with both vents fully open. So if you close one vent, the other becomes twice as powerful. So it doesn't seem like there's a lot of air going. There's plenty of air going out of there. Some people think that it's a bit hard to sleep in a boat when you got noise like, you know, a ventilation fan behind me or something like that running. It's actually not that big a deal. Sometimes known as white noise, just the ability to drown out some of the other sounds can often be pretty comforting. On a lot of the big commercial boats that I used to work on, when we would go down into the Southern Ocean for weeks, sometimes months at a time, it was pretty normal. You've got a 4,500 horsepower engine running 24/7. You've got all the fans and winches and everything like that going. You end up just not even noticing that there's noise. Your mind just blanks it out, and it kind of becomes quite soothing. Under torchlight, this is what we end up with. So you can sort of see the shape and pattern that we've got. So a full seal around the inside, and then a whole bunch of beads on the outside just to make it all relatively level when we bolt it up. But that there, it dries like that and then squeezes into essentially like a rubber gasket when we seal it up. So we can have some pretty big gnarly gaps, and it doesn't matter, that seals up and takes the space. The beauty of doing the gaskets that way is if you let them dry, so on those pieces of pipe that get bolted in and out, because they're dry, you can clamp them up and then later on, 6 months down the road, whatever, unbolt them, and it sort of just allows you to unbolt them. It's a really neat way of doing it, as opposed to running a bead of wet sicker, bolting it up, and then essentially having a glue between them. We don't want the glue property, we just want the rubber compressibility. With them bolted up, they're bar tight, and we're pretty chuffed with. You can sort of see there's a wee bit of sealant squeezing all the way around here. It's exactly what we wanted to see. So when you bolt them, they're like really, really quite tight. With that sealant squeezing out, there's pretty much zero chance that there's going to be a leak there. Yeah, I think these are going to be lovely.